What would you do if the only way to save your family's legacy was to hide your true identity and confront the very secrets that tore it apart? Emma's heart raced as she stood before the ornate gates of Oakridge Manor. The once gleaming brass was now dull, much like the fading fortunes of her family's business. She took a deep breath, reminding herself why she was here. "It's now or never," she whispered, pushing open the gate with trembling hands. As she walked up the long driveway, Emma couldn't help but marvel at the grand old house. It was beautiful, even in its slightly run-down state. Ivy climbed the weathered stone walls, and the windows seemed to watch her approach with silent judgment. Emma tugged nervously at her newly dyed brown hair, hoping her disguise would hold up under scrutiny. The front door opened before Emma could knock, revealing a stern-faced woman with graying hair pulled back into a tight bun. "You must be the new housekeeper," she said, her voice as crisp as her perfectly pressed uniform. "I'm Greta, head of housekeeping." "You're late." Emma's carefully practiced accent wavered as she replied, "I'm so sorry, ma'am. The bus was delayed and dashed." "Excuses won't clean these floors," Greta cut her off, ushering Emma inside. "Now come along. There's work to be done." As they walked through the grand entrance hall, Emma's eyes widened. The interior was even more impressive than the outside, with high ceilings, intricate woodwork, and grand staircases. But signs of neglect were everywhere: dusty chandeliers, faded carpets, and peeling wallpaper. "This place has seen better days," Emma murmured, forgetting herself for a moment. Greta's eyes narrowed. "And what would you know about that? You're here to clean, not comment." Emma's cheeks flushed. She had to be more careful. "Of course I'm sorry. It won't happen again." As they continued the tour, Emma's mind raced. How had her family's prized possession fallen into such disrepair? And more importantly, how could she fix it without revealing her true identity? Their tour was interrupted by a commotion in the kitchen. A harried-looking man in a chef's uniform burst out, nearly colliding with them. "Greta, Mr. Baldwin is demanding changes to tonight's menu, but we don't have the ingredients or the time." Greta sighed. "David, calm down. We'll figure something out." She turned to Emma. "Wait here. Don't touch anything." As soon as Greta disappeared into the kitchen with David, Emma's curiosity got the better of her. She slipped down a nearby hallway, her footsteps muffled by the threadbare carpet. At the end of the hall, a locked door caught her attention. She reached for the handle, her heart pounding. Suddenly, a deep voice behind her made Emma jump. "And what do you think you're doing?" She spun around to find herself face to face with a tall, imposing man in an expensive suit. His cold eyes seemed to see right through her disguise. I was just looking for the supply closet," Emma stammered, her mind racing for an excuse. The man's eyes narrowed. "The supply closet is in the opposite direction. I suggest you find your way back to wherever you're supposed to be, miss." Emma Brown," she replied, willing her voice not to shake. "Well, Miss Brown, I'm Mr. Baldwin, the manager of this estate, and I don't appreciate staff members wandering where they don't belong. Is that clear?" Emma nodded, her throat dry. As Mr. Baldwin turned to leave, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had just met her biggest obstacle in saving Oakridge Manor. Back in the entrance hall, Greta reappeared, looking flustered. "There you are. Come on, then. Let's get you started on your duties. And remember, in this house, curiosity is not a virtue." As Emma followed Greta, her mind whirled with questions. What was behind that locked door? Why was Mr. Baldwin so defensive? And most importantly, how would she ever uncover the truth while keeping her own secrets hidden? Little did Emma know, her journey at Oakridge Manor was just beginning, and the challenges ahead would test not just her determination, but her heart as well. Emma's arms ached as she scrubbed the grand staircase, her knees protesting against the hard wood. A week into her undercover role at Oakridge Manor, and she was beginning to understand why the staff looked so worn down. "You missed a spot," Greta's voice rang out, making Emma jump. The head housekeeper pointed to a barely visible smudge on the banister. Emma sighed and redoubled her efforts. As she worked, she couldn't help but overhear a hushed conversation from the hallway below. "Please, Mr. Baldwin," a woman's voice pleaded. "I need those extra hours. My son's medication dash." "I'm sorry, Maria," Mr. Baldwin's cold voice cut in, "but we simply can't afford any overtime. Perhaps you should consider finding a second job." Emma's heart sank as she watched a petite woman with tired eyes hurry past, wiping away tears. This was the human cost of the manor's decline, and it hit Emma harder than she'd expected. Later that afternoon, Emma found herself in the kitchen, helping to prepare for dinner service. The chef, David, was a whirlwind of activity, his face etched with stress. "Hand me that pan, will you?" he called out to Emma. As she passed it to him, she noticed his hands were shaking slightly. "Are you all right?" Emma asked, concern in her voice. David let out a bitter laugh. "All right. I'm trying to prepare a 5-course meal for 20 guests with half the ingredients I need and no staff. But sure, I'm just peachy." Emma's brow furrowed. "Can't we just change the menu?" "Ah, try telling that to Mr. Baldwin," David scoffed. "He insists on keeping up appearances, even if it means working us to the bone." As they worked side by side, Emma's mind raced. There had to be a way to turn things around for everyone's sake. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion in the dining room. Emma peeked out to see a well-dressed couple being escorted through by Mr. Baldwin. "As you can see, Mr. and Mrs. Rothschild, Oakridge Manor has maintained its historic charm," Mr. Baldwin was saying, his voice oozing charm. "It would make an excellent addition to your hotel chain." Emma's blood ran cold. Potential buyers? This was worse than she'd thought. Back in the kitchen, Emma tried to focus on her tasks, but her mind kept wandering to the locked room she'd discovered on her first day. What secrets did it hold? And how were they connected to the manor's decline? As the evening wore on, Emma found herself working alongside Maria, setting tables for dinner. The woman's eyes were red-rimmed, but she worked with quiet determination. "I'm Emma," she introduced herself softly. "I'm sorry about earlier." Maria gave her a wan smile. "It's not your fault. We're all just trying to survive here." As they worked, Maria opened up about her struggles. A sick child, mounting bills, and the constant fear of losing her job. Emma's heart ached, knowing that her family's mismanagement had contributed to this woman's hardship. The dinner service was a disaster. With too few staff and not enough supplies, errors were inevitable. Emma watched in dismay as Mr. Baldwin berated David in front of the guests, the chef's face burning with shame. Later that night, as Emma collapsed into bed in the tiny room she shared with 2 other maids, she felt the weight of the day pressing down on her. How could she fix this mess without revealing her true identity? And even if she did, would the staff ever trust her after learning of her deception? As she drifted off to sleep, Emma's dreams were haunted by the faces of those she'd met, Maria's tired eyes, David's shaking hands, and Mr. Baldwin's cold stare. In her dream, she reached for a door, the mysterious locked room, certain that the answers lay just beyond. But no matter how hard she tried, the door remained stubbornly shut. Emma woke with a start, her heart racing. In the dim light of dawn, she made a silent vow. She would find a way to help these people and save Oakridge Manor, no matter the cost to herself. But first, she needed to uncover the truth behind that locked door, and she had a feeling time was running out. Little did Emma know, her determination was about to be put to the test, and the secrets of Oakridge Manor ran deeper than she could have ever imagined. Emma's heart pounded as she crept through the darkened hallways of Oakridge Manor. The old floorboards creaked beneath her feet, and she winced at each sound. It was well past midnight, and she knew she was taking a huge risk. But after weeks of dead ends, she was desperate for answers. She paused before the locked door that had haunted her dreams. With trembling hands, she inserted the key she'd borrowed from Mr. Baldwin's office. The lock clicked open, and Emma slipped inside. The room was filled with dusty filing cabinets and shelves stacked with ledgers. Emma's eyes widened. This was the manor's record room. She pulled out her flashlight and began to search. Hours passed as Emma pored over financial records, her confusion growing with each page. The numbers didn't add up. There were discrepancies, missing funds, and worst of all, her family's name appeared on document after document. As dawn began to break, Emma stumbled upon a leather-bound ledger hidden behind a loose panel. Her breath caught in her throat as she opened it. There, in black and white, was proof of her family's ownership of Oakridge Manor, and evidence of years of mismanagement and possible embezzlement. Emma's mind reeled. How could her father have let this happen? She had always believed in his integrity, his vision for the manor as a force for good in the community. Now she wasn't sure what to believe. Tucked in the back of the ledger was an envelope addressed to her in her father's handwriting. With shaking hands, Emma opened it and began to read. "My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you've discovered the truth I was too ashamed to tell you in life. Oakridge Manor was meant to be my legacy, a place of hope and second chances. But I made mistakes, trusted the wrong people, and lost sight of what truly mattered. I had dreams of turning the manor into a sanctuary for underprivileged youth, a place where they could learn, grow, and build better futures. But those dreams slipped away as financial troubles mounted. I'm sorry for the burden I've left you, Emma, but I believe in you. You have the strength and the heart to right my wrongs and make Oakridge Manor what it was always meant to be. With all my love and faith in you, Dad." Emma clutched the letter to her chest, tears streaming down her face. The father she had idolized was flawed, human, but his dream, his vision for the manor, that was worth fighting for. A noise in the hallway startled Emma from her thoughts. Hastily, she gathered the ledger and letter, slipping them into her apron pocket. She had just closed the door behind her when a voice made her jump. "What are you doing up so early?" Emma spun around to find David, the chef, eyeing her suspiciously. I couldn't sleep," Emma stammered. "Thought I'd get an early start on my chores." David's expression softened. "Rough night, huh? I know the feeling." He gestured for her to follow him. "Come on, I could use a hand in the kitchen. Those Rothschilds are back today, and Mr. Baldwin wants everything perfect." As they walked, Emma's mind raced. The potential buyers were returning. Time was running out. She had to find a way to save the manor, to fulfill her father's dream. But how could she do it without revealing her true identity? In the kitchen, Emma worked alongside David, chopping vegetables and kneading dough. As they prepared for the day ahead, she found herself opening up to him. "David," she began hesitantly, "have you ever wanted to change things around here? Make them better?" David paused, a sad smile on his face. "Every day, but Mr. Baldwin dash." "Forget Mr. Baldwin for a moment," Emma interrupted. "If you could do anything, what would your dream be for this place?" As David began to speak, his eyes lighting up with passion, Emma felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone in this fight. But as the morning sun streamed through the kitchen windows, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that her time was running out. The weight of the ledger in her pocket seemed to grow heavier with each passing moment. She had uncovered the truth about her family's past, but the real challenge lay ahead. How could she honor her father's legacy while forging her own path? And when the truth finally came to light, would the people she had come to care for ever forgive her deception? As the sounds of the waking manor filled the air, Emma steeled herself for the battles to come. Little did she know, the greatest test of her courage and heart was just around the corner. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the manor's grounds as Emma paced nervously behind the old gardener's shed. Her mind raced with the weight of her discoveries and the enormity of what she was about to do. One by one, the staff began to arrive: David the chef, Maria the housekeeper, and a handful of others Emma had grown close to over the past weeks. Their faces were a mix of curiosity and concern. "What's this all about, Emma?" David asked, his brow furrowed. Emma took a deep breath. "I have an idea," she began, her voice stronger than she felt. "A way to save Oakridge Manor and make things better for all of us." As Emma laid out her plan to revitalize the manor, cut costs, and improve working conditions, she saw a spark of hope ignite in their eyes. But doubt lingered. "It's a beautiful dream," Maria said softly, "but Mr. Baldwin would never allow it." Emma's heart raced. This was the moment of truth. What if we didn't need Mr. Baldwin's permission? A hush fell over the group. Emma steeled herself and continued, "I know this will sound crazy, but I need you to hear me out. My real name is Emma Oakridge. My family owns this manor, and I'm here to make things right." The silence that followed was deafening. Emma watched as shock, disbelief, and betrayal flashed across their faces. David was the first to speak, his voice tight with hurt. "You've been lying to us this whole time?" Emma's eyes stung with unshed tears. "I'm so sorry. I needed to understand what was really happening here. But now I know, and I want to fix it, with your help." For a tense moment, Emma thought they might walk away. But then Maria stepped forward, her eyes filled with a mix of wariness and hope. Tell us more about this plan of yours, she said. Over the next hour, ideas flowed. David suggested a farm-to-table restaurant concept to cut food costs and attract new clientele. Maria proposed hosting community events to rebuild local goodwill. Others chimed in with ideas for eco-friendly renovations and educational programs. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the manor, Emma felt a glimmer of hope. They had a plan, a bold, risky plan, but one that just might work. "We'll need to convince Mr. Baldwin," Emma said, reality settling in. "If we can show him the potential dash." A twig snapped nearby, cutting Emma off mid-sentence. The group froze, eyes wide with fear. From behind a nearby oak tree stepped Mr. Baldwin, his face a mask of cold fury. "Well, well," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "What do we have here? A little mutiny in the ranks." Emma's heart plummeted. How much had he heard? Mr. Baldwin's eyes locked onto Emma. "Miss Oakridge, is it? I think it's time you and I had a chat. The rest of you back to work. Now." As the others reluctantly dispersed, casting worried glances back at Emma, she squared her shoulders and met Mr. Baldwin's icy stare. "Your office or mine?" she asked, a hint of defiance in her voice. Mr. Baldwin's eyes narrowed. "Oh, I think we'll use the study. There are some things you need to see." As Emma followed Mr. Baldwin into the manor, her mind raced. What did he know? What evidence did he have? And most importantly, how could she turn this disaster into an opportunity? The study door closed behind them with an ominous click. Mr. Baldwin moved behind the imposing oak desk, pulling out a familiar leather-bound ledger. "I believe you've seen this before," he said, his voice dangerously calm. Emma's breath caught in her throat. The very ledger she had discovered in the hidden room now lay before her, its secrets exposed. "Mr. Baldwin," she began, but he cut her off with a raised hand. "Before you spin any more tales, Miss Oakridge, let me make something very clear. I've been managing this estate for longer than you've been alive. I know every secret, every skeleton in the closet, including your father's." Emma's heart pounded. What did he mean? Mr. Baldwin leaned forward, his eyes cold. "Your father's grand dreams nearly bankrupted this place. I've spent years cleaning up his mess, keeping this manor afloat. And I won't let some idealistic girl with half-baked plans undo all my hard work." For a moment, Emma felt her resolve waver. But then she thought of the staff, of Maria's tired eyes and David's passionate ideas. She thought of her father's letter, of his dream for what Oakridge Manor could be. Drawing herself up to her full height, Emma met Mr. Baldwin's gaze. "You're right, Mr. Baldwin. I don't know everything about this place's history, but I do know its heart, its potential. And I'm not giving up without a fight." A tense silence filled the room. Outside, the last rays of sunlight faded, casting long shadows across the study. In that moment, Emma knew that the real battle for Oakridge Manor was just beginning. As she stared down Mr. Baldwin, Emma's mind raced with questions. What secrets did he hold? How far would he go to maintain control? And most importantly, could she find a way to save the manor and honor her father's legacy without losing the trust of those she had come to care for? The clock on the mantel ticked loudly, marking the seconds of this fragile stalemate. Emma took a deep breath, ready to make her case. But little did she know, the next few moments would change everything, and test her resolve in ways she never imagined. The early morning light filtered through the kitchen windows as Emma worked alongside David, kneading dough with a fervor that betrayed her inner turmoil. It had been 3 days since her confrontation with Mr. Baldwin, and the tension in the manor was palpable. "You're going to turn that dough into cement if you keep at it like that," David said gently, placing a hand on her arm. Emma sighed, forcing her fingers to relax. "Sorry, I feel like I'm running out of time." David's eyes softened with understanding. "We're with you, Emma. You know that, right?" A lump formed in Emma's throat. Despite her deception, the staff had rallied around her, their shared dream of a revitalized Oakridge Manor bringing them together. Their conversation was interrupted as Maria burst into the kitchen, her face flushed with excitement. "Emma, you won't believe what I just overheard. The Rothschilds are hosting a charity gala next month, and they're looking for a venue." Emma's eyes widened. "That's perfect. If we could convince them to hold it here, it could put Oakridge Manor back on the map," David finished, a grin spreading across his face. As they huddled together, brainstorming ideas for the perfect proposal, Emma felt a surge of hope. This could be the opportunity they needed to showcase the manor's potential. But their excitement was short-lived. Mr. Baldwin's voice cut through the kitchen like ice. "What's going on here?" The trio froze, exchanging nervous glances. Emma stepped forward, chin raised. "We have an idea that could bring in much-needed revenue and publicity, Mr. Baldwin. I think you'll want to hear this." Mr. Baldwin's eyes narrowed, but he gestured for her to continue. As Emma laid out their plan for hosting the Rothschild Gala, she could see a flicker of interest in his cold gaze. "It's not without merit," he admitted grudgingly, "but pulling this off would require resources we don't have." "Give us a chance," Emma pleaded. "Let us show you what we can do." After a tense moment, Mr. Baldwin nodded curtly. "You have 1 week to put together a proposal. If it's not up to par, we go back to discussing a sale." "Understood." As he strode out of the kitchen, Emma let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Emma worked tirelessly with the staff, pooling their talents and resources. David created a sample menu that showcased local ingredients, while Maria's event planning skills proved invaluable. Late one night, as Emma pored over budget spreadsheets in the study, a soft knock at the door startled her. It was Greta, the stern head housekeeper, who had been noticeably distant since Emma's true identity was revealed. "May I come in?" Greta asked, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. Emma nodded, curious. Greta entered, her eyes taking in the scattered papers and Emma's tired face. I owe you an apology," Greta began. "I've been unfair to you. It's just, I've seen so many people come through here with big ideas, only to leave when things got tough." Emma's heart ached at the pain in Greta's voice. "I'm not going anywhere," she said softly. "This place, these people, they've become my home." Greta's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Your father, he was a good man despite his mistakes. He would be proud of what you're trying to do here." As Greta shared stories of Emma's father, his kindness, his vision for the manor, Emma felt a missing piece of her heart fall into place. She hadn't just inherited a property. She'd inherited a legacy of compassion and hope. With Greta's support and wealth of experience now on their side, the proposal began to take shape. But as the deadline approached, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Mr. Baldwin had been suspiciously quiet, his piercing gaze following Emma's every move. And then, the night before their presentation, Emma overheard a hushed phone conversation that made her blood run cold. "Yes, the sale is still on track," Mr. Baldwin was saying. "This little charade of theirs won't change anything. I'll make sure of it." Emma's mind raced. Mr. Baldwin had never intended to give their plan a fair chance. He was still determined to sell the manor, regardless of their efforts. As she slumped against the wall, her heart heavy with despair, Emma felt a gentle hand on her shoulder. It was David, his eyes filled with concern. "Emma, what's wrong?" In that moment, looking into David's earnest face, Emma made a decision. She couldn't face this alone anymore. It was time to lay all her cards on the table. "Gather everyone," she said, her voice shaking but determined. "There's something I need to tell you all. About my father, about Mr. Baldwin, about everything." As David hurried off to round up the staff, Emma took a deep breath. The truth could cost her everything. The trust she'd built, the friendships she'd formed, maybe even the manor itself. But as she thought of her father's letter, of the dream they all shared, she knew it was a risk she had to take. The clock struck midnight as Emma made her way to the old ballroom where the staff was gathering. With each step, she felt the weight of her family's past and the manor's future on her shoulders. What she was about to reveal could change everything. But as she pushed open the heavy doors, ready to face whatever came next, Emma knew one thing for certain. The real fight for Oakridge Manor was about to begin. The old ballroom was eerily silent as Emma stood before the assembled staff. Moonlight filtered through the dusty windows, casting long shadows across the worn wooden floor. Every face was turned towards her, a mix of curiosity, concern, and apprehension etched in their features. Emma took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. "I owe you all the truth," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "The whole truth." Over the next hour, Emma laid bare everything. Her father's dreams for the manor, the financial mismanagement, Mr. Baldwin's deception, and her own journey from privileged heir to undercover housekeeper. As she spoke, she watched the emotions play across their faces: shock, anger, disappointment, and finally, a glimmer of understanding. "I know I've betrayed your trust," Emma said, her voice cracking, "and I'll understand if you can't forgive me. But please believe that everything I've done out of love for this place and for all of you." A heavy silence fell over the room. It was David who broke it, stepping forward with a determined look in his eyes. "You're not the only one with secrets, Emma," he said. "I've been developing new recipes, planning menus that could revolutionize our dining experience. I was too afraid to speak up before, but now I think it's time we all fought for Oak Ridge Manor." One by one, others began to speak up. Maria shared her vision for community outreach programs. The gardener, Old Tom, revealed his plans for sustainable landscaping that could cut costs and attract eco-conscious guests. As the night wore on, a sense of purpose filled the room. They were no longer just employees. They were a team, united in their desire to save Oak Ridge Manor. But their newfound unity was about to face its greatest test. The ballroom doors burst open, revealing Mr. Baldwin, his face a mask of fury. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. Emma stepped forward, her chin raised defiantly. "We're taking back Oak Ridge Manor, Mr. Baldwin. No more secrets, no more lies." Mr. Baldwin's eyes narrowed. "You foolish girl. You have no idea what you're up against." He pulled out a stack of documents from his briefcase. "Your father's debts, the mortgage, the back taxes, it's all here. This place is drowning in red ink, and I'm the only thing keeping it afloat." A murmur of uncertainty rippled through the staff. Emma felt her heart sink, but she refused to back down. "Maybe so," she said, her voice gaining strength. "But you forgot one thing, Mr. Baldwin. The spirit of this place. The people who make it more than just bricks and mortar." She turned to the staff, her eyes blazing with passion. "My father made mistakes, it's true. But his dream, our dream, is worth fighting for. Oak Ridge Manor isn't just a business. It's a home, a haven, a place where people can find second chances." Emma's words seemed to ignite something in the room. Greta stepped forward, her usual stern expression softened by determination. "I've served this house for 40 years, she said, addressing Mr. Baldwin, "and I've never been prouder of it than I am right now, watching these young people fight for its future." One by one, the staff voiced their support. Even in the face of the daunting financial reality, they stood firm. Mr. Baldwin's face contorted with rage. "This is ridiculous. You can't simply wish away debts and obligations. The Rothschilds' offer is our only hope." "No," Emma said firmly. "It's not. We have a plan, Mr. Baldwin. A plan to make Oak Ridge Manor profitable and true to its original purpose. And we're going to present it to the board of directors." Mr. Baldwin scoffed. "The board? They'll never listen to you." "Maybe not," David chimed in, moving to stand beside Emma. "But they'll listen to all of us. Together." As the staff rallied around Emma, Mr. Baldwin's composure finally cracked. "You'll regret this," he snarled, storming out of the ballroom. In the wake of his departure, a mix of elation and trepidation filled the air. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. Emma looked around at the determined faces surrounding her. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "for believing in me, in us. We have a lot of work ahead, but together, I know we can do this." As the first light of dawn began to creep through the windows, the group dispersed, energized and ready to face the challenges ahead. Emma lingered in the ballroom, her mind racing with plans and possibilities. David approached her, a soft smile on his face. "You did it, Emma. You united us." Emma shook her head. "We did it. All of us." She paused, looking into his eyes. "David, there's something I need to tell you." But before she could continue, Maria burst into the room, her face pale. "Emma, David, you need to come quickly. It's Mr. Baldwin. He's gone, and he's taken all the financial records with him." The momentary triumph evaporated in an instant. Emma's heart raced as the magnitude of this new crisis sank in. Without those records, how could they possibly convince the board of their plan's viability? As Emma rushed out of the ballroom with David and Maria, her mind whirled with questions. How would they find Mr. Baldwin? What other obstacles lay ahead? And most importantly, could they save Oak Ridge Manor before it was too late? The sun rose over the manor's grounds, marking the dawn of a new day and the beginning of their greatest challenge yet. Emma knew that the next few hours would determine not just her fate, but the fate of everyone who called Oak Ridge Manor home. The next few days at Oak Ridge Manor were a whirlwind of activity. With Mr. Baldwin gone and the financial records missing, Emma and the staff found themselves racing against time to piece together a viable plan for the board meeting. Emma stood in the center of the grand foyer, now a makeshift command center. Flip charts covered in numbers and ideas lined the walls, and the air buzzed with determined energy. "Okay, team," Emma called out, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. "Let's go over what we have so far." David stepped forward, a stack of menus in his hands. "I've redesigned our food offerings to focus on local, sustainable ingredients. It'll cut costs and appeal to the eco-conscious crowd." Maria chimed in next. "I've reached out to local schools and community centers. We can offer educational programs and tours, creating a new revenue stream and fulfilling your father's vision for youth outreach." One by one, the staff presented their ideas. Greta had developed a plan to update the rooms with a mix of modern amenities and historic charm. Tom, the gardener, outlined a strategy for creating stunning, low-maintenance landscapes. As Emma listened, her heart swelled with pride and hope. They were transforming Oak Ridge Manor not just physically, but in spirit as well. But their progress was interrupted by a commotion at the front door. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she saw who had arrived: the board of directors, led by a stern-faced woman she recognized as the chairperson, Ms. Hawthorne. "What is the meaning of this?" Ms. Hawthorne demanded, taking in the scene before her. "Where is Mr. Baldwin? And who are you?" Emma stepped forward, summoning all her courage. "Ime mawa krij, Mam. And I believe we have a lot to discuss." Over the next hour, Emma and the staff presented their vision for Oak Ridge Manor. They showed the board through the manor, pointing out areas for improvement and explaining their innovative ideas. As they walked, Emma could see the skepticism in Ms. Hawthorne's eyes slowly giving way to interest. But when they reached the library, the chairperson's expression hardened once more. "This all sounds wonderful in theory, Ms. Oakridge," she said. "But without concrete financial projections, how can we possibly consider this plan?" Emma's heart sank. This was the moment she had been dreading. Without the records Mr. Baldwin had taken, they had no way to provide the detailed financial information the board needed. But then, an unexpected voice spoke up. "I believe I can help with that." Everyone turned to see Greta standing in the doorway, a dusty old ledger in her hands. "Mr. Baldwin wasn't the only one who kept records," she said, a hint of a smile on her face. "I've been maintaining my own books for years, just in case." As Greta laid out the financial history of the manor, filling in the gaps left by Mr. Baldwin's deception, Emma felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. Hours passed as the board pored over the numbers, asked questions, and deliberated. The staff waited anxiously, the fate of Oak Ridge Manor hanging in the balance. Finally, Ms. Hawthorne emerged from the library, her face unreadable. "Ms. Oakridge, your team has presented a compelling case. While we cannot ignore the financial challenges ahead, we are intrigued by your vision." Emma held her breath, hardly daring to hope. "We're prepared to give you a chance," Ms. Hawthorne continued. 6 months to prove that this plan of yours can work. If you can show significant progress in that time, we'll consider a long-term commitment to your new direction for Oak Ridge Manor." A cheer erupted from the staff. Emma felt tears of relief and joy spring to her eyes. They had done it. They had won a chance to save the manor. As the board members filed out, making arrangements for regular check-ins and progress reports, Emma turned to her team. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "All of you. We couldn't have done this without each other." David stepped forward, taking Emma's hand in his. "We're just getting started," he said softly. "The real work begins now." Over the next few months, Oak Ridge Manor underwent a remarkable transformation. The tired old building slowly came back to life, its halls once again filled with purpose and hope. Emma worked tirelessly alongside the staff, painting walls, planting gardens, and welcoming their first community groups. There were setbacks and challenges, of course, burst pipes, unexpected expenses, and moments of doubt. But through it all, the team's spirit never wavered. One sunny afternoon, as Emma stood on the manor's front steps watching a group of children excitedly enter for their first art class, she felt a presence beside her. It was Greta, a rare smile on her face. "Your father would be proud," Greta said softly. "You've brought his dream to life, and then some." Emma's heart swelled with a mix of pride and bittersweet longing. "I just wish he could see it," she replied. "Oh, I think he can," Greta said, patting Emma's hand. "In every smile, every life touched by this place, that's his legacy. And yours." As the sound of laughter echoed from inside the manor, Emma realized that Oak Ridge wasn't just a building or a business. It was a living, breathing testament to the power of community, second chances, and unwavering hope. But even as she basked in the glow of their progress, Emma knew that challenges still lay ahead. The 6-month deadline loomed, and there was still so much to do. And somewhere out there, Mr. Baldwin was still at large, a potential threat to everything they had built. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the rejuvenated grounds of Oak Ridge Manor, Emma squared her shoulders. Whatever came next, she knew one thing for certain: they would face it together as a family. The transformation of Oak Ridge Manor was more than just a renovation. It was a revolution of the heart, a testament to the enduring power of dreams. And for Emma, it was just the beginning of a journey that would redefine not just the manor, but her own place in the world. The morning of Oak Ridge Manor's grand reopening dawned bright and clear. Emma stood at the window of her father's old study, now her own, watching as the first rays of sunlight touched the freshly painted walls and newly planted gardens. Her heart raced with a mix of excitement and nerves. "It's time," David said softly from the doorway. Emma turned, a smile spreading across her face. In the months since their confrontation with Mr. Baldwin, her relationship with David had blossomed into something more than friendship. But today, there was no time to dwell on personal matters. As they walked towards the main entrance, Emma's mind flashed back to her first day at the manor, disguised as a lowly housekeeper. How far they had come since then. The grand foyer was a hive of activity. Staff bustled about, making last-minute adjustments. Emma's breath caught as she saw Maria helping her son, now recovered thanks to the manor's improved healthcare plan, arrange flowers. "Places, everyone," Greta called out, her usual stern demeanor softened by a hint of pride. As the doors opened and the first guests began to arrive, Emma felt a moment of panic. What if no one came? What if all their hard work was for nothing? But her fears proved unfounded. Soon, the manor was filled with people, locals curious about the changes, reporters eager for a story, and even some of Emma's old business contacts, intrigued by rumors of the manor's transformation. As Emma led tours and answered questions, she could see the wonder in people's eyes. The manor wasn't just a beautiful old building anymore. It was a beacon of hope and renewal for the entire community. Suddenly, a hush fell over the crowd. Emma turned to see Ms. Hawthorne, the board chairperson, making her way through the throng. Her face was unreadable as she approached Emma. "Ms. Oak Ridge," she said, her voice crisp. "I must say this is unexpected." Emma's heart pounded. This was the moment of truth. Had they done enough to secure the manor's future? Ms. Hawthorne's stern expression slowly melted into a smile. "It's remarkable. You've not only met our expectations, you've exceeded them. The board is prepared to fully back your vision for Oak Ridge Manor." A cheer erupted from the staff who had gathered nearby. Emma felt tears of joy and relief spring to her eyes. But their celebration was short-lived. A commotion at the entrance drew everyone's attention. Emma's blood ran cold as she saw who had arrived. Mr. Baldwin stood in the doorway, his face a mask of fury. "This isn't over," he snarled. As security moved to intercept him, Emma made a split-second decision. "Wait," she called out. "Let him speak." The room fell silent as Emma approached her former adversary. "Mr. Baldwin," she said, her voice steady. "Welcome to the new Oak Ridge Manor. Would you like a tour?" For a moment, it seemed like Mr. Baldwin might explode with rage. But as he looked around at the transformed manor and the united staff, something in his expression changed. I don't understand," he said, his voice losing its edge. "How did you do this?" Emma smiled softly. "We did it together. All of us." including you, Mr. Baldwin, as she explained how they had built upon the foundation he had maintained for years. Adding new ideas and energy, Emma could see the fight leaving Mr. Baldwin's eyes. Perhaps, he said slowly, I was too hasty in my judgment. The tension in the room dissipated, replaced by a sense of closure and new beginnings. As the day wore on, Emma found herself back in her father's study, her study now. She picked up the old photo of her father that sat on the desk, tracing his smiling face with her finger. I did it, Dad, she whispered. We did it. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. It was David, Maria, Greta, and the rest of the core team who had made this miracle possible. Emma, David said, his eyes shining with pride and something more. There's someone here to see you. Curious, Emma followed them back to the foyer. Her heart nearly stopped when she saw who was waiting. An elderly man stood there, leaning on a cane, his eyes twinkling with unshed tears. Hello, Emma, he said, his voice filled with emotion. It's been a long time. Emma's voice caught in her throat. Grandpa! As she rushed into her long-estranged grandfather's arms, Emma felt the last piece of her family's legacy fall into place. The manor had not just been saved, it had been reborn. Later that night, as the last of the guests departed, Emma stood on the front steps of Oakridge Manor. David's arm was around her waist, and the rest of her newfound family, staff, friends, and her grandfather gathered around. Looking out over the moonlit grounds, Emma felt a sense of peace wash over her. The journey had been long and full of challenges, but it had led her exactly where she was meant to be. Oakridge Manor stood tall and proud, its windows glowing with warm light. It was more than just a building now. It was a home, a haven, and a symbol of what could be accomplished when people came together with a shared vision. As she turned to go back inside, ready to face whatever new adventures tomorrow might bring, Emma knew one thing for certain. This was not the end of their story. It was just the beginning of a new chapter, for her, for Oakridge Manor, and for all the lives they would touch in the years to come. The legacy of Oakridge Manor had been redefined, and its future was brighter than ever. If you loved Emma's journey, hit the like button and subscribe for more inspiring stories on life narratives. Share this video with someone who needs a boost today. Thanks for watching and see you next time.